So, welcome to another episode of Phoenix Rising, Finding Your Life Calling with me, Tola Benny. We invite guests over here who come and share with us their life journeys and whatever lessons they've learned, and they give us the tips and the tricks and all the lessons that they have mastered in their journeys. So I'm always excited to have a guest because I'm always learning. I feel like this is the year that I'm just growing and growing through the interactions that I'm making and the people that I'm inviting to my podcast. So today I have with me Giulia Wisner, and she is all the way from LA in the US. I am very excited. This woman wears many hats, as you will hear when we start our discussion. But before we go down that road, welcome, Giulia. Please say hello to the audience.
Hello, everybody. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, Tola, for having me and really giving me a platform with your audience to kind of spread a message of inspiration and also of education in a subject that is really dear to me. I have a lot of experience and interest in mindset and how to integrate plant medicine into your life. And I believe that an experience is just an experience without integration, and that a lot of the problems that are plaguing humans today are of mindset and socialization and people not fitting into the mold that is set for them. So I'm here to really help people realize how powerful they are and that they can write their own stories and really break out of that box or mold that is holding them in. And I had been through a natural disaster. I had a really horrible earthquake in my town, and I was really, my house was in the center of it when I was 6 years old. I had other things, other traumas happen to me earlier in my life that I had blocked out. And it kind of just kept going. The cycle of trauma just kept repeating itself. And throughout childhood, and nothing I could do, really things that were out of my control. I was a child and a teenager, but it really just compounded upon itself, and it led to things like drug addiction and depression and suicidal thoughts, getting into relationships with really toxic people, and just living what I call a really low vibration existence where I was living in a hole, I was living a lie. My parents, my family had no hope for me. I really was just living directionless. I was introduced to cannabis at an early age and really had a good experience with it, but never integrated the experience or learned anything or had any lessons that I learned because of it. It was really just a recreational thing and just experimenting at that point. But through someone that I loved and thought that I could trust, I was introduced to crystal meth when I was 16. After having a really traumatic experience. A boyfriend, my first love, got sent away for a year to a boarding school and taken away in the middle of the night. And it was very traumatic. And I was also having problems at home. So my childhood was very just chaotic. And I was reaching out to trust anyone that was available who would pay attention and really give me what I thought was love at that point. And it led to me being in my 20s with that same person that I loved and trusted, introducing me to opiates. And that was the path I took for another many years. I was in and out of institutions. I had jobs here and there, but never anything that would last. I was always having to take off to go to a hospital. I was put on so many psychiatric medications. I mean, I have a full volume in my own head of what these medications can do and can't do, and the symptoms and side effects and things like that. And I'm lucky I didn't have many horrible side effects, but it was getting off them when I needed to. I ended up finding kind of a ray of God, call it, I don't know, but just a moment of clarity when I was 27 years old that I didn't want to live like this anymore. It was a snowball effect of my ending up like, I went MIA, just went into a blackout and was nowhere to be found for like a couple of days, and my phone went dead and everyone was so scared for me. I had a lot of those situations though. So it wasn't just that did me in. I had a lot of those situations. There's so many different things with different plants. It's different sets and setting and things. With cannabis, it's, it's a little more legal, so and a little more accepted where I am, but psychedelics are really not.
Okay.
So, and
because
psychedelics,
cannabis has health benefits, right?
yeah, and they're actually seeing that there are health benefits as well with psychedelics. There are trials going on in the US. So there is evidence-based research and a lot of scientific things going on, like in the background, but it's not legal yet. So it's very like hush hush and not very mainstream. With cannabis, since it's been legalized in a few states fully, and there's been a commercialization and branding of products and a lot of stakes and money involved. There's just more acceptance because it's just more out there. And with psychedelics, there's just not a lot of knowledge about it unless you were already in the 60s and went through the hippie movement where, LSD was kind of widespread and stuff, and have, experience there, and you're that age. The younger generations really don't know much about it. And it's really, like I said, hush hush, and you have to be really careful about who you talk to about it. So it's definitely, I'm really into astrology, and it's part of my human design. I'm not sure if there's anyone out there who knows human design, but it's amazing and really accurate to each individual person. You put in your name, your birthday, the time you were born, the place you were born, so they have the right time zone, and it gives you an actual way your energy flows through your systems and your chakras, and it's very individual. So it goes into personality. It even gives you a diet, and when you're really deep into it, it's a whole lifestyle and kind of experiment. It's been really accurate to my journey, and so I followed that. And in my specific type, I have like a very revolutionary feature where I just kind of set myself in situations that are not quite mainstream and a little controversial, and it's kind of been happening all my life without me meaning to. Now it's just I'm doing it with purpose and knowledge of my vision and what I'm doing. So it's it's a little more intentional now, but it's definitely been part of my journey to kind of be on the cusp and not really a conformist. So
the curiosity that killed the cat.
Yeah, that's been, but now I'm using that and harnessing it in a really positive way, which I find that is part of the magic, is finding the way to harness your energy in a way that is beneficial. Even if you have ADHD or you're autistic. My son has both autism and ADHD, and I have ADHD as well. And it's just a different way of your brain working. It's just different neurotransmitters doing different things at different times. And you can take a medication to dull those things from happening, but you can certainly also learn to harness the energy flow and how it's moving through you, and how to best like go with the flow, so to speak.
Work with yourself.
I find super interesting. That's my mission, is to like find the flow, go with the flow and find that flow and really curate it. And I find that, there's definitely a place for Western medicine. I'm not going to say like throw your antibiotics and don't ever go to a doctor. That would be really irresponsible. And there are people that say that. So I would really say caution people to in finding someone they trust, and if they're interested in this, to find a guide that they absolutely trust and is, number one, like best about the benefits, but also honest that this is real medicine. It would be irresponsible to say that this is for everyone, that you will absolutely benefit from it. It's very powerful stuff. It would just be like taking any other pharma medication. It's just plant medicine. It's not synthetic. Some of it is synthetic, but
you're talking about the psychedelics now.
Yeah, the psychedelics, and because some of it is synthetic, like ketamine, but it all does come from a plant originally, but a lot of it has been synthesized for the clinical trials and things like that for like more like the pharmacological standpoint. Yeah, there is synthetic plant medicine now. It's kind of
Giulia,
unfortunate.
what is the benefit of taking psychedelics for someone like me who doesn't know anything?
Well, there's different ways of doing it. There, you can take a very micro dose, which is like a dose you wouldn't even particularly feel the effects. You would feel like maybe an uplift in mood or a little more emotional to the forefront. If you're feeling, if you're usually like intellectualizing something and very much in your head, you're going to feel more in your heart space and more connected and just easier to emotion. That's with psilocybin, and with LSD you feel a little more focused and just a little, the connection is a big one. Like it's just, you're very much in heart space. It's, you get into a creative flow and you feel pretty good. But you don't feel anything like if you took a full dose of the
Okay.
substance. If you took a full dose of the substance, that's where they would call, you know, the psychedelic effects, which would be, you know, shape shifting, like the rooms, like if you look at a cabinet per se, like if it's a wooden cabinet, it will shift the shape, like it will become bigger and smaller.
Okay.
Colors will change, color variations, pattern variations. And then, you know, at higher doses than that, you can get the auditory stimulation and just a lot of things, like all your senses basically are
Okay.
getting hit. So it's a really intense experience. I wouldn't call it, the big difference is that I wouldn't call it a hallucinogenic. I think that's like a very not not correct thing for necessary LSD or psilocybin, which is mushrooms. I would say you're definitely cognizant and you're in charge of your senses and your movement. Your motor skills are maybe a little exaggerated, like being a little, you know, tipsy, but you're there, you're on Earth, you're on this planet. There are psychedelics that are more powerful than that, that you will literally not be in this universe. Like you will
Is it
probably, I
now,
don't know
are
if
we
you'll,
now talking astral projection?
yes, like absolute astral projection and things that you've never even seen on Earth, just
Wow.
different universes and dimensions, and just seeing life in a whole different way. And there's things like ketamine, which is a dissociative and is being used really for a lot in actual doctors' offices now all through the United States. And it's being used for treatment resistant depression, for depression that isn't treated normally by any medication they have, and people are really suffering, and they use this stuff and they're having like miraculous things happen, and reframing of their minds and their rewiring of the systems, and having periods of remission from depression that they've been having for, you know, 30, 40 years without stop. And, you know, to have a moment where you have that weight lifted off you, even for a day, let alone what this ketamine is doing, and for months on end without people even having to take the medication after, you know, taking it, they're still in remission. And so that's ketamine and the wonder it can do. And people have had really great experiences with ketamine. People said that their doctors set them up with like a TV that was, you know, showing like an under the sea film or something, and that they had two people or two fish that they had named because they were swimming in the sea with them in their mind. And they just had a fabulous experience. And this is someone that had, you know, been depressed for many, many years without any help from anything. And he's finally having some joy in his life. And, you know, I think for things like mushrooms and LSD, it's like a spiritual experience. If you've never experienced something like that before, I remember my first experience with mushrooms when I was 18 years old. And I had tried other drugs. I had really been experimenting with many drugs that probably I shouldn't have been doing at that age, but we got a hold of them. And but I was afraid because I heard hallucinogenic and I was like, I don't want to hallucinate. I'm scared. It sounds like I would lose control or not be, you know, in the front seat here. You know, I don't want to be in the back seat of my own car while no one's driving. Like it just sounds not like a good thing. But I tried this with my first love, and he had tried it before me, and he was like, you have to try this. You've just have never experienced anything like this. I can't even describe it. And it really was like a magical experience. I happened to have a great experience with it. And then had another experience with it afterwards and didn't have such a great experience, but never integrated those experiences. So they really were, like I said, an experience is just an experience without integration. So I had a, good experience and a bad experience, and then didn't really touch it for a long time. I just wasn't interested. I was like, okay, I had a good experience, a bad experience, and I'm just going to leave that here. I don't need to know anymore. And I was done with my research with that. Unfortunately, I wasn't done with my research with every other not good substance on this earth, drug wise, but that was what I had to do. That was my story, and that's where I went. And
yeah.
so I rediscovered it at a different time when I had refound time without those drugs and without a lot of psych medicine really clouding my vision. I really was without a veil. And it was after I had my child. So I was just in a different space. I was close to 30.
But also there's a reason for that, because look at where you are now, because now you can teach, now you can heal, based on you have a deeper knowing of this stuff, you have experienced it yourself. And so now you know how to use responsibly, or what are the pitfalls to, you can spend, you like an expert in the field. So you kind of like you've earned your stripes, if I can put it that way.
So to speak, I mean, I've been through it.
It's not like if I started doing teachings around drugs and what not to use and how to use, I've never experienced it. So it's kind of different. But when it comes from...
there's a certain trust you give to someone if they've experienced what you're about to go through. I feel like there's a certain vulnerability. You're able to be more vulnerable with someone knowing that they've walked where you walked. And that's such an important part of plant medicine, it's such a vulnerable personal experience, and it's, it can be really really emotional. You could have a lot of grief, and you're really bringing a lot of trauma and spaces you haven't explored to the forefront. But that's the great part about it, is it really helps you move through those emotions in a safe way if you're surrounded by the right people and in a trusted space, and able to talk about it afterwards, and talk about, how you are going to reframe things for the future, and how you're going to shape the rest of your journey from now on. People can, some experiences are really goofy and they don't really have much meaning to them. And it's just about, being okay with that and moving past that onto the next thing, and still taking the benefits from, having to pause and realizing it's not everything you expected. But then there are also those really great, magical, just aha experiences that you can have. And the integration point is so huge, because you just basically did so much work in an 8 to 12 hour setting. And really the work doesn't start until after the experience, but you still do a lot of work in that experience. A lot of emotional work happens, and a lot of rewiring and a lot of reframing. And then you're in this point of a very neuroplastic brain, which is, kids like 0 to 3, infants to 3-year-olds have neuroplastic brains, which are malleable and still forming, and that everything, it's that absorption, that sponge brain that really absorbs everything around you. And that is what psychedelics can give you, is that neuroplastic brain for short periods of time. And so for the 24 to 36 hours after the experience, you're in a space where you are more creative, you are more able to be in touch with your feelings and your goals and your wants and needs. You're able to connect with your future self more. You're able to, if you need to, forgive your past self or anyone you're in. I've been doing a lot around forgiveness, and it's been a hard thing, but it's been helpful to have that reframing available when I need it. It's just it's a tool. It's not a cure, but it's a tool, and it can be really useful. And especially if you're in the right part of your life. Like I was in my 30s, I wasn't in my 20s and still really exploring my identity. My identity is pretty much gelled at this point, and it's not hitting me in a way that threatens my identity. I think there are people that it might really be hard, and there's such a thing as ego death, where you really just, you almost re-traumatize yourself, because you just see your whole life as as one big sham and an excuse and
Yeah.
this and that. And it really, it can be hurtful, you know, to really face the truth like that. And so people can really just want to run away from that. And I find it's so important to have the right person who knows you, and not knows you. I mean, you can find someone that doesn't know you, but at least did the intake properly and knows something about your life to be able to relate to you and have that trust in the process, because it can be scary. It's a lot of, you're uncovering a lot of stuff and peeling back a lot of layers. So it's not as much a, you know, cannabis is, you see what you see is what you get with cannabis. You're never going to have, you know, you can take more milligrams to have a higher effect, but you're not going to really, I guess you could have an awakening with it. You can use it as however you want, but I just don't see it as having that like
Yeah.
aha, like, oh my gosh, as
I think
psychedelics
people
do.
just use it recreationally often, you know.
Yeah. Well, and it is medicinal too. I mean, more than recreationally, it does,
Yeah.
you know, help arthritis and help so many different symptoms of so many different ailments. And there's different cannabinoids, and there's THC and Rick Simpson oil called Phoenix Tears that treats epilepsy in kids and cancer, and actually shrinks cancer cells. And it's not fake. Like, there are families that, you know, live on farms that go and curate protocols for children who don't have access otherwise. And it's a very serious, like, charity business, like,
Yeah.
to curate for kids, because chemo basically almost kills them, and they need that restorative health that still kills the cells that they need to kill without killing the good cells, you know. It's so important. So cannabis is such a miracle, but people do use it recreationally. It's also fun and a heck of a good time if you're with the right people. And, you know, it's just as good as drinking a glass of wine, in my opinion. I'm not much of a drinker. I've never really been. That's just not been my thing. But my mom is a wine drinker. She really enjoys her glass of wine at the end. Or any questions, anyone is welcome to find me and let me know.
Yeah, thank you so much for honoring me with your presence, Giulia. And I wish you a good day further. You still have a day ahead of you. Nighttime for me, and it's a cold night in Cape Town.
Oh, wow.